Welcome to Chess, ladies and gentlemen. All right, man, I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. As you guys are probably aware, we do have the Fischer World Random Chess Championship qualifiers going on right now. So we are trying to see, there's two different qualifiers. We're trying to see who makes it to the finals and all the way and wins the whole thing so that we can see what other players go to Iceland and play against Magnus and Wesley. So for the World Championship, Chess 960, also known as 9LX. So, of course, always for my people that are coming from the Philippines, I will say Mabuhay. Kumusta na aking magkaibigan? I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. Anybody who is coming from Russia, I will say Privyet, Kakadela, Dobre Otra. Spasibo for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. I appreciate it very much. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we got the move D4. And so, as you guys know, this is Chess 960. So there are 960 possible combinations to put the pieces. Even though it is kind of weird setting it up, of course, we're not going to have a novelty or anything like that. A lot of the same ideas and understanding of chess is going to become relevant. Controlling the center, trying to attack points, trying to optimize your pieces as far as what your opponent is doing, where your opponent king is, things like that. Those are things that you're still going to be trying to understand and trying to do. So, of course, excuse me, of course, D4 is just making a central move and you are trying to take, some space. And of course, if black does nothing, you are trying to get E4 in, and then you have like a super gigantic, beautiful center. But Fedoseev says, bro, I'm too gangster for that. So he does go F5. So it's kind of like a Dutch type of a situation. We are just very much trying to discourage the move E4. So we do see the move knight to D3. We got G5. We got castles by Eric Hansen. And even though you have castled, this doesn't really kind of move the king out of complete danger because, as you guys know, this diagonal is open. We do see the move bishop to G7, just trying to, place a little bit of an attack on that pawn right there because at the moment it is undefended. So, Eric Hansen decides he's like, man, I'm not going to worry about that pawn, bro. Even though it is a central pawn, I'm going to go ahead and counterattack. So I got the move knight to G3. Attacking your pawn. So we decide to try to make sure that our pawn, our bishop is still movable. We have gotten everything that we need. We go ahead and move knight to D6 and protect our pawn on F5. And then now we do see the move E3. And that's multi-purposeful. You are trying to think about, getting your bit. Of course, you're not going to put your bishop on C4. Snap. But you are trying to, open lines and stuff like that up to get your pieces out. And so the bishop does come to G6. And you guys notice, like I said, you're still going to have, very similar ideas, as far as your pieces are concerned. This bishop is, attacking the king side. And so is this other bishop. So, we got that. So we do see the move F4. This is kind of like a move, you notice that if this diagonal does become open, that is kind of dangerous for your king. So we do see the move F4 just trying to shut down what black is doing. And then we do see the move knight H to F7. We got the move knight up to E5. Pawn takes F4, pawn takes F4. And like I said, we do kind of have that diagonal plugged up for that bishop. We do see the move bishop to H6. And this can be kind of a problem because this bishop is, opposite this king. And it is, as of now, attacking this under-defended pawn. We do see the move bishop to D2. We got B5. We're trying to think of, getting our queen out at some point. Of course, not there, but maybe, something like D5 or something. Just kind of activate the queen just a little bit and centralize it. The bishop does come up to E2. We see the queen down to B7, and then now the bishop comes to F3. So Eric Hansen just saying, bro, I want to kind of fight against what you're trying to do. And so we do see the move queen over to A6. And you kind of you don't really have a great issue with your pawn on F4, but what Eric Hansen is trying to think about is like, hey man, I want to kind of maximize my pieces just a little bit more. I don't want my bishop stuck on D2, and I want to kind of, defend this pawn. So what he decides to do is go knight back to D3. After we see the knight going to C4, we do see bishop to B4. And it's kind of crazy because, you know, the computer doesn't really agree with what Eric Hansen did. It's saying, bro, you know, why did you do all of these extra moves? And you just kind of put yourself in a bad position. But if we back up, after the move queen came to a6, you know, I kind of messed up myself because I was thinking, you know, what about knight to e2? Because, you know, I play a lot of d4 and Catalans and stuff like that. And so, you know, when you're talking about, you know, clearing the diagonal or, you know, making it possible for you to push e4, you know, knight to e2 is a legitimate move. But, you know, the computer doesn't like my idea either. It's like, bro, y'all, you guys both don't know how to play. I'm like, all right, whatever, man. You know, the computer will make you want to give up in chess. But like, man, you're not good enough. Anyways, like I said, the knight to e2, it wasn't like it just like demolished your position, but you know, it was basically saying there were better ways to play. So I'm like, whatever, bro. So if we go back and look at what the computer wants, it basically gives you the first move of king to b1, and it says, you know what you need to do? You need to get that king off of that diagonal because it can become dangerous. So that is your first order of business. After we see knight to c4, bishop going back to c1, maintain that bishop. After the move e6, now you go knight to e2. So it wasn't that, you know, me or Eric weren't thinking right. It's just that it didn't really like the order that we went in, especially my knight to e2 move. It was like, no, that's not the right time to do that knight to e2. So some of the problems that you have is that you can be thinking of the right move to play in a particular position, but it might not be the absolute correct time to actually play that move. So that is what makes chess very, very complicated, is that, you know, most people know good moves to make, but sometimes that move is not good in that particular, like at that exact moment. So you see knight to e2 came up ultimately, right? But it didn't like my knight to e2 immediately. So, you know, that like I said, that is what makes chess pretty interesting. So after we see all these moves by Eric Hansen, we have reached the point in the game that if you do want to pause the video and try to see, there is a very explosive move that Fedoseev can play in this position. And I think it's actually very, very hard to find. I'll be very surprised if somebody gets the move. If you want to go ahead and pause the video and try to see if you can find that move, go ahead and do so. Just catching me a swig. You know, you got to stay hydrated, man. So, like I said, I think this is a very hard move to find. It is the move e5. And some of you, I think a lot of you guys are probably looking like, what? Like e5 is like super covered, right? Actually, you know what? The funny thing about it is e5 is actually a hole in white's position. And it is because of what the computer literally said that you needed to do earlier. Move king to b1. After the move e5, you would be taking with the d pawn. As you guys are familiar, probably, this pawn is pinned to this king, so it cannot move. So after pawn takes e5, knight f takes e5, and then you really, really don't want to go knight takes e5 and then go into this fiasco. So we are looking at king to b1 in this position. You guys see that the computer literally wanted you to play king to b1 in like so many different situations. And sometimes those quiet moves, they really don't seem like they kind of get you anywhere. So they are actually pretty tough to play when you feel like, oh, I got to be active. I got to do something. I got to, you know, get cracking some kind of way. King to b1 just doesn't seem like it does that. Knight takes f3, pawn takes f3, and then after we see, you know, long castles by black, black is in a very, very nice position right here. They have, you know, gotten their rooks connected. All of their pieces are out, and they have doubled white's pawns. So this is a much tougher position to play for white, especially being a 960. But we did not see that. After we saw bishop to b4, we did see the queen going over to f6. So, you know, Fedoseev kind of missed his opportunity there. And we do see the knight going to e2. So knight to e2 ultimately came, but like I said, when I played it, it was like, man, that's not what you need to be doing. After we see knight to e2, we do see the move a5, kind of backing the bishop up a little bit. The bishop does go to d2. We see knight taking d2, rook taking d2. We got the move d6. And then we see a really nice move tossed in there because you don't have a lot of options. It's not like this move is just crazy explosive. It's just the fact that black doesn't have a lot of options. The only thing they can do in this position is take knight takes e5, pawn takes, and then queen back to f7. And this is pretty much the only way you hold that position. Of course, after knight to e5, you absolutely cannot take here because then after this pawn takes, that's bye-bye queen, even if you move it over here. So we don't do that, bro. Don't get it cracking that way. So after we see knight takes, pawn takes, queen goes back to f7, like I said. And then we have just now made the move g3, which was kind of like the reason that you moved the knight out of the way in the first place, so that you can get a nice little pawn center going. And I mean, it's fairly even for both sides. I mean, you know, everybody's kind of doing what they need to do. But we do see the move bishop to h5, which actually, unfortunately, kind of deflects White's queen away from the defense of the king. So after we see bishop taking h5, queen taking h5, we do see the move knight to d4. It does protect this pawn over here, but black has another opportunity to make a really, really nice move, and it is the move along castles. And you actually kind of have some problems here as white. You actually have the immediate bishop takes f4, which does pin this rook down to this king because this pawn is pinned to this rook. So there are so many tactics alive in this position, and that was something you couldn't do before because if the bishop took here, you're looking at knight to e6 with check, and then that's going to be picking up the bishop and attacking the queen. So you don't want to do that. So that's why castling long was the absolute best position for Fedoseev to be in, and it was pretty clearly a win in that situation. But we saw Fedoseev actually go short castles, and that completely changes the whole game. The only one thing that white needs to do is get their queen free. Because if you guys notice, white hasn't played with their queen the entire game. So that is their main issue that they have, and that is something that is heavy on Chris Hansen's mind. And he says, bro, I'm about to do something about this, son. So we do see the move knight to e6 first. And this is placing a nice attack on that undefended pawn on e7 first. The rook b goes to e8, and then we do see the move a4. So we have activated our knight a little bit more. We got our queen about to come into the game. And after we see the move b4, trying to shut things down a little bit, we do see the move queen to a2. King goes over to h8, and then we do see queen to e6. And this is actually a very, very beautiful position for white. This is completely winning at this point in the game. These two pieces are kind of offsides. They're not really doing much for black on this part, especially because the king is way over here. And I mean, there really is no entry points for this queen. And I mean, you know, you kind of have this pawn hit. This pawn is definitely hit after the move b3, something like that. So, I mean, white literally has everything going for them in this position. We do see the bishop coming back to g7. We're trying to get some activity in there because, I mean, like I said, the bishop is not doing anything on h6. So going back to g7. We do see the move rook over to e1, and I mean, that was literally white's only piece that wasn't really doing much, and it is much more active on this square. Whether we see pawn capturing at some point or the pawn capturing and then we're, you know, doing what we need to do. We do see the move h6. Fedoseev is saying, man, I got to get some breathing room for my king, but, you know, like I said, it is too little too late. We do see the king going over to b1 because of how great this position is for white. You know, Eric Hansen can just kind of take his time and be patient and make these nice little quiet moves. Like I said, king to b1 was literally a move that, you know, the computer was like, bro, you should play king to b1 at some point in the game. And Eric Hansen plays it right now. And it is one of the top moves in this position. Just be patient. You know, black is starting to get into a Zugzwang situation where they don't really have a lot of good moves. After we see the king going to h7, we do see the queen going down to d5, and now we are not fearing a capture on d6. But we do see pawn taking e5, knight taking e5. We got rook over to a8, and then we do have the knight up to d7, and we are eyeing some forks. You know, not only are we attacking this knight, but I mean, if we can get into a certain situation, this knight could come to f6, and we're going to be forking this king and this queen. So we do see the rook sliding over to f8, rook f to e8, and then we do see rook d to e2, and now we have an immense amount of pressure on this e7 pawn. The rook does come down to a6. We see rook taking e7, rook taking e7, rook taking e7. We do see the queen down to h3. We're trying to get some type of penetration going, but the problem is you are actually in a mating scenario right here after the move queen to f7. And, I mean, of course, you know, we don't want to move rook over here because of this situation. So we really kind of only have queen going to f4. You could have checked, but, I mean, it's just going to unravel that much faster. So after the move queen to g4, we do see knight to f8 with check. The king goes up to h8, and then we do have knight down to g6. We have reached a point in the game where Fedoseev does resign the game. And I mean, even though it looks really, really bad for black, maybe it might not be like 1000% clear what where the mates and stuff like that are. So I will show you all of the different possibilities that can happen from this. It'll be really quick. One of them is like a maiden one. So the first one, where basically black can give the, one of the absolute most resistance, is rook takes g6. And then after we see, and it's crazy because white only has 2 pieces in this position. After the rook goes to e8 with check, you can either move the king down to get mated on g8, or you can throw the bishop in the way, and then after the queen takes f8, rook goes back to g8, and then you do see queen to h6, taking h6 with check. That is one of them. Knight going to g6, you can also take with the queen. Excuse me. Queen going to g6, a rook going up to e8. The same thing with the bishop. After the rook takes, the queen has to block, and then you do see a rook. Either rook or queen. You can take with either one. I mean, of course, both of them are mating. After the queen goes to g6, the only other option is to go just immediately down to h7. But this does just allow queen to g7 with mate. So those are all the reasons why this is a completely lost position. So I appreciate everybody stopping by very much. Spasibo, meron salamat aking kaibigan. And I will see you guys next time.